Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and today we're going to be talking about something quite interesting. Now, spoiler warning, the topic of today's video is about one of the two extreme trials in the game. As such, if you haven't finished the MSQ, you don't even know what the second or final boss MSQ trial is. So if you don't want to see that, if you don't want to hear about that, you're going to want to click away from this video. So that's my spoiler warning for this. But it's a really funny thing that happened with the second extreme trial in Dawntrail, and it's acknowledged here in a known issue post. So let me explain what they say, and then let me explain what actually happens with the bug itself. Currently, we have identified the issue below. We are identifying the cause and working to correct it with the highest priority. We ask for your understanding and patience. Speaking so fast, clearly I don't have any patience. Current known issue. During one of the trials added in patch 7.0, the debuff that is supposed to be granted when the boss uses the action Projection of Turmoil disappears without activating properly when the effect time ends. We are currently working to correct this issue as quickly as possible and will reflect the fix on the public servers as soon as the work is completed. Until the fix is in place, we ask that you please refrain from making use of this issue as a tactic. We apologize for the inconvenience. So, this is actually a little different than I thought it was going to read, but basically, you get a debuff that when you trigger its effect by doing the mechanic, it does a split damage AoE around the player. And what this is saying is when that debuff expires naturally without being triggered, that it's supposed to explode on anyone who still has it, which if you're alone will kill you, and if there's more than one, unless you're splitting up in the light party or something, you're going to die. But what's funny is the strategy that lets you even make the debuff disappear, I thought was the bigger issue at play here. Essentially, two corners of the room never have to interact with the mechanic if you go into them, but they're in the supposed death wall. The death wall in this fight is not threatening. It applies a damage over time effect, and then you keep that effect when you leave the death wall, but it's only like a 20, 30,000 damage a tick. It's like nothing. So what people were doing is they were ducking themselves into the corner, waiting for this debuff to fall off, and then continuing the fight. I thought the wall not killing people was going to be the thing that they fixed, because if the wall kills people, this whole idea basically never comes into play because it's not possible to do with the wall killing you. But instead, it looks like they wanted the wall to be not lethal, and they just want the debuff to properly expire. So if all 8 people are tucked into the corner, 6 or 7 of them, they would all die, trying to do that strategy where they duck into the wall. So it kind of achieves the same thing. Just, it wasn't the fix I was expecting. But they're clearly saying it's unintended. They don't want people to do it. And as many of you who may have watched my guide know, I bring it up and say that as long as it's not fixed, it's probably going to be the strat that people use. Well, since it's being fixed, we need to discuss the strats that people can do. Now, I'm going to go over to my EX2 footage, so if you stuck through this video up to this point, now is like the final warning, because I'm doing this without an edit. I'm going to click over to the tab, and I'm going to have it in front. So that's your warning. If you don't want to see EX2, then hopefully you've clicked away at this point. So in my clear, and thus consequentially in my guide, we did kind of like a speed break strat. So we broke into 2 light parties, and we did, tank, healer, melee, ranged as the order. And this is the debuff. You can see everybody has it on the right side. When you touch this wall, it does the effect. So it does this split damage AoE. So we just did it really quick along the wall here. So you can see one person went first. You get a magic vuln after each one. So we wait for the magic vuln to wear off, and then the next person goes. And we're done with the mechanic, like, barely into it. Requires a decent amount of MIT and healing. And this made sense to us. We didn't really want to try to think of like a super clever way to do it. And it works for both versions of this pretty well. I'm going to share a different strategy with you. One that I think probably should catch on as opposed to what you're seeing here. But then even later in the fight, when you have to do it again, but you have to be swapping between sides of the room, we just take a break between each of them. We pop 2, and then we go to the right-hand side here because he's going to cleave the left. We pop another. All of this makes sense. It all works. But somebody actually tweeted me a strategy maybe like 3 days ago, even 2-3 days ago, and said, what do you think of this strategy? And I said, as long as the wall cheese exists, nothing else matters. And they said, but what if it doesn't exist? And sure enough, today, after the post came out, they followed up with another comment like, well, geez, fixed. So I'm going to show you what they shared with me. I'll share the video in the description, so that way you can check it out for yourself and look at it. But it's essentially a static position strat. And as you can see here, we're just using generic markers in our like day 1-2 kill. They're using markers that are very specifically set for this, which makes sense. Our markers were literally for nothing in particular. They were just standard markers that worked for us. So here we have what they sent me. It's the title of the video is Extreme Trial 2 Projection of Turmoil Braindead Strat by Bagel. Now, it's got the word Braindead in it. So you already know that the PF is going to latch onto it. You know, that's generally all you need to get the PF to latch onto something. So good naming convention. And what you can see here is the markers are set up in those 2 markers being up against that wall, which is always where the line comes. Both the tanks are going to start there. And then you see all the other markers lined up. And that's because one person basically stands on each of those markers and the 2 tanks just walk with the line. And then, you know, they stand with the group, and then the group just kind of naturally converges on itself over the course of the entire arena. So it starts as 2 tanks taking solo stacks with buffs. Then it's a 3-player stack, then a 4-player stack, 5, 6, 7, 8. You put the casters all the way in the back of the room, and that way they could just do whatever. And it works for both projections of turmoil very, very well. And it makes it less and less stressful as it goes on. And then when you have to start, you know, swapping sides, oh, I have to go left, I have to go right, you just take a step to the left or right inside of your own marker, and you otherwise don't have to move the entire party. So, and by the way, this was Grinz who tweeted this at me. It's also their YouTube profile. Like I said, I'll include it in the description since they're the ones who sent it to me. But as you can see, they're playing healer. So you can kind of get an idea for the order here. So you see the 2 tanks all the way up front. You see a tank here, and there's actually a tank on the other side of the boss. They just pop some cooldowns. They have a crit low here. They have a few cooldowns running. You don't really need a whole lot of cooldowns on the tank. It doesn't do that much damage to them. But obviously, they're taking autos at the same time. You know, you want them to be well protected since they are eating the stack solo. But it's not really that hard to eat it solo as a tank in the first place. Then, melee 1 is right here. Melee 2 is right here. So now it's a 4-player stack. Then they've got the first healer here. There it is. And it looks scary. You can see the size of it kind of looks like it's going to reach the next one. Of course, you know, you could always, you know, make small adjustments in case you're a little nervous about the size of the AoE. You're definitely going to want exact markers given how it looks. See, it's actually only this big. You can see the edge right here. It actually just reaches, you know, from marker to marker, just barely. And then you can see the Picto in the back, just living their best life. Everybody moves, and now it's the 7-player stack. And they even have more room. Like, you could spread these markers out more if you really wanted to. But by that point, all of the mechanics have resolved, you know. And then they have the rest of the projection of turmoil. I think this is the 2nd projection of turmoil they have here as a 2nd example as well. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So then this is... Do I really need to describe it? I mean, we have the footage for it. Might as well look at it. But it's the exact same strat here. It's just people are going to be moving from either the left to the right side, depending on which side the sword cleaves. So you see Zoral Jaw teleports mid here. Okay, I got to admit, this part, kind of toxic. For one particular reason, that melee was out of range. Maybe you want to shift all these markers back a little bit, because that first melee was out of range briefly. All right? So we already know the PF is going to be on it if that's the case. Either that or you're going to want to stick a healer there or something. Somebody's going to come up with an alternative. Either the markers being moved back and being less succinct in that spot. Aloha, I'm trying to record. Now's not the time. Or something along those lines. Just put the healers in the front and then let the melees follow the entire... Yeah, somebody's going to come up with something. But you get the general idea. It's still the same, you know? Oh, they got... Okay, so here's actually the big thing. I just remembered, it doesn't matter if it clips the other one. It's okay. I don't even know why I was making a big deal about that. It doesn't matter if it hits the next person in line, because it takes until the 2 seconds are up. Yeah, it hits this person every time. So it converges even faster. It's actually a 4-player stack right from the get-go. Right from here, it's a 4-player stack. You can see right here. Yeah, I hadn't even noticed that. They're actually deliberately designed to take the next person in line to immediately bring the day. Yeah, so it's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 for the stacks themselves. I had actually missed that little detail. I thought it was just barely not splashing into it because the animation's a little bit wider than it actually looks. But you can see here, now for the half room, look, they all shift over. They dodge it, just continue down the line. No big deal. Oh, got to shift over to the other side because he's swinging to the other side. All good. Now they can go back with the next one. Boss is going to move. There you go. Now he's doing the cleave on that side, and they're all good. So I think that if I were to recommend a strat, obviously the day one strat, you know, the raiders going in and looking at the how can I resolve this mechanic as quickly as possible. Not quite the same as the give everyone a position at the start, do something like this, and you don't need to worry about, you know, the light party stacks and trying to figure out, you know, trying to make sure the order's there and that people are kind of constantly inching away from the line. Is it that hard to do? No. But any movement for the party finder, which involves no movement, is always going to pop off a lot more than the other. So if you're looking for a replacement strategy over the original, over what's in my guide, and specifically the wall cheese itself, this one's probably the one that's going to catch on. Or at the very least, if there is one easier than this, I think this should be the one to catch on. You could theoretically do something that's very similar, but like push it even further up so that way it doesn't take as long to resolve, but it doesn't matter. You have to follow the boss here anyway. The casters get to stand still the whole time. It is what it is. So, like I said, I'm going to include this link in the description of this video. So if you need a reference point, a visual one, you have that. You have access to that. And thank you again to Grinz. Oh, look, you want to talk about Yugi? You want to talk about all my recommended videos? What was that? Fresh Prince, Yu-Gi-Oh!, The Blacklist. Hey, now you know what I watch on YouTube. One of them was with Carlton. All the same, that's what you're going to do. So I'm going to include the link to that in the description. Be sure to give that a peek. Thank you to Grinz for tweeting it at me. I definitely didn't think they were going to fix it. They've been so... Listen, after Ultimate with Garuda, they admitted they made a mistake and then never fixed it because the players were using it. I wasn't sure, but then you could look at something like P7 with the marker strats and then how they ended up expanding. You never know. You never know. So it's... I'm very interested to see. And hopefully we don't have too many of these throughout Dawntrail. We don't want to constantly have strategies being patched. We haven't had an expansion like that ever, and we definitely don't want one to start now. So hopefully it's one of few across the entire expansion. But that's going to be a wrap for this video. Just wanted to share that news with you. Just wanted to share that strategy with you, as well as remind you of the other one that's currently in my guide. And with that, I will see all of you in the next one. Be sure to like and subscribe and stay tuned for all the latest in Dawntrail news strategies, all that good stuff. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, bye-bye.